Cowboys fans, welcome into How About Wow. Let's get into it. We're already a couple of days down the road to week 14. Cowboys, Lions. Detroit came into this year with Super Bowl dreams, but the wheels are falling all the way off. They're losing bodies, they're losing games, and now they might even be losing faith. Meanwhile, your Cowboys full throttle coming in hot. This party is not slowing down anytime soon. Take it away, Jimmy.
The only thing else I got to say is, how about them Cowboys?
Yeah, buddy, I'm Gavin Dawson from 105.3 The Fans, G-Bag Nation, 2 to 7 every weekday. And every day here on the pod, I talk with my favorite football Neanderthal, the all-academic SEC lineman at Kentucky, New Bear Lisnewski. How you doing, buddy?
Might mean less than ever when you lose 41-0 in your rivalry game. And it's been a long weekend in terms of the rooting interests on all the things you always introduce me as, but all the things that are turning me into a Sunday guy after a lifetime of Saturdays. Not that I didn't love Sunday, but now Sunday's becoming like clear-cut number one. It's just easier to root for the pros, even though the college kids are getting paid. When it's 41-0, like at least Dak Prescott gets one in.
Man, Sundays are something else, especially when the Cowboys are rolling. And this season that we talked about for a good 8-9 weeks, right up until the bye, it looked just dead in the water. But suddenly these Cowboys look so legit. I think they're one of the 10 best teams in the NFL playing right now. Leave a comment down below, your thoughts on that, and hit the like button if you think the Cowboys are an actual contender, if they can make the playoffs. But
if they can get in, right?
Yeah, if they can get in, I think they're dangerous. They're just as good as anybody out there right now. It's a down year for both conferences. Why not have it be this year? It'd be the ultimate Cowboy thing to do if after 30 years it's this season that finally breaks through. But I mean, I guess if I'm evaluating the Cowboys right now, the only weakness that I'd be concerned with is the runs to the outside, the screen passes to the outside, and then your corner play. And we'll see with Trayvon Diggs coming back this week. I mean, Deron Bland has quietly stacked up 3 consecutive good games there since his disaster against Arizona. But buddy, I really wanted to start talking about the Lions here. What a story arc with Frank Ragnow. What the hell happened here? Not returning after all after a failed physical.
There's no way you're sitting in a room with a grade 3 anything, just like nothing to see here, taking notes. Like, let's go take pictures with that. I mean, look, I know guys have injury histories. I mean, if you took pictures of some of my bones right now, they're 85 years old. That's, arthritis from scar tissue on down through, playing injured versus just playing hurt or taking the requisite time to actually get healthy. I get that there's grade 3 hamstring. That's like when you start talking about hammies and obliques on big dudes, it's always funny to me. That's when you know something's really weird.
That's like the guy walking into the drug testing clinic smelling like he stepped out of Cheech and Chong's van, and he's like, "What? I tested positive for weed."
I know way. I didn't know. Who, me?
Yeah. I don't know. I there's got to be more to this story though. Like, was he like getting an early workout in with the guys and pulled his hammy, and so this is the story they're giving us out of a desire to control it because their PR guy says you can't tell them the truth. I think anything is possible beyond the explanation that he didn't know he had a near hamstring tear until the physical.
Anything is possible. Can't hear it and not hear Kevin Durant screaming for no reason. Having said that, the rolling out of bed every single morning for me is like a Rice Krispies commercial. So I think at a certain point, I mean, the man retired because it was time to go. He was coming back because he was trying to do a solid for his guys, and they need him. Like he might be one of those dudes who just wakes up. Like Jerome Bettis used to talk about how he had to go down the stairs on his ass for 4 or 5 days at the end. Like he couldn't play anymore because he literally couldn't go to the bathroom without crawling. And some of these dudes, like, my wife's got a golf ball sized cyst holding her knee together from volleyball, and they're trying to get her to 50 before they replace it. Like, some people just wake up and pain is a constant, right? So
sure,
short of him going out to do some drills and the turf monster taking a little bite and everyone just kind of trying to grin and bear through it, the weirdness is the word that I keep coming back to around this one because, you want to see dudes who still want to play, especially in an area of need. But hey, this is better for Dallas.
It absolutely is in a couple of ways. I mean, he probably was not going to be able to play this week anyway. I don't think that was the plan when I read the initial stories about his return, like he was going to need 10 days or so to ramp up. But if the Cowboys do win this game and they would move to 7-5-1, it would push the Lions back to 7-6. And then you have to look at the wild card situation. This, the biggest issue with the Lions right now is Frank Ragnow absence. As much as the Ben Johnson departing for Chicago hurt them, Ragnow's retirement has really left him behind the 8 ball, and they mitigate it decently with tackle play, but they have played 4 different guys at the interior offensive line positions, and every single one of them has a PFF score under 50, which is failing. Like they are bad starters. Like when Terrence Steele has a bad game, you're like, oh boy, that was horrible. What's his PFF score? It's around 40, 45. Every single one of them for the season is under 50.
Hey, so something I just saw, all joking aside, it looks like the Lions were aware there was a potential injury. They just didn't know how severe it was. Justin Rogers shot out with the Detroit Football Network. I hadn't seen this report at all day today. So I guess they were aware that he had some sort of, I think they were probably expecting him with the wear and tear alone, let alone stepping out of a duck blind or whatever he's doing, in his retirement time. But yeah. I guess they were aware. What I was thinking about from speaking of awareness is like everyone who left, players, coaches, how about all the men who've gone down so far? I mean, the red ink could Ragnow, and let me make sure I'm saying this right because it's Glasgow. Ragnow is coming because Glasgow's hurt. And you talk about trying to mitigate stuff where, Amon-Ra St. Brown's a pretty damn good Band-Aid. But even his 70-game catch streak comes to an end because he just catches it, wow, talk about puns and intention. When you look at some of the streaks in NFL history, when you see guys play 200 games, catch a ball in 200 straight games, make a tackle, like Joe Thomas playing 20 million, it was over 10,000 snaps, and then all of a sudden something snaps and everything ends. The luck that has to go into never just taking one wrong step. You talk about walking and chewing bubblegum. Some of these turfs out there, Pittsburgh alone, especially if Pitt played the night before or there was a concert, I don't know how they play on some of this stuff.
Yeah, and Amon-Ra St. Brown considered week to week, but chances of being able to play with a sprained ankle 7 days after one took you out of a game and you were unable to return, that's a super long shot. Sam Laporta already out, Ragnow not coming back. There is a lot going on with this Lions team, and for the balance of the season, they're still top 10 defense and top 5 offense. Dan Campbell took over the play calling. It looked good for a couple of weeks, but now he is under fire as well for lack of creativity and over-aggression. What they kind of hung their hat on being overly aggressive right up until the end last year has just not worked out as well this year as it has, and they haven't really corrected their strategy on that. Like Dan Campbell still going with the I'm believing my guys and kind of being like the play calling redneck that he is, for lack of a better term.
Where you're from, it's like how you're splitting hairs over who's offended and who takes it as a term of endearment, right?
Right. So, but the interesting thing here is if you just simulate this game statistically, the computers would probably still favor the Lions. How much does momentum matter here, and how much does the last 4 weeks of Lions struggle matter when you're looking at this matchup?
Yeah, this is where the thing that I'm going to be the most interested to see is I love JMO. Like Jameson Williams is one of my favorite guys from a when is the light going to go off, like a George Pickens light kind of thing. Not the same type of spatial awareness and go everywhere, enter the matrix, but speed and just get open ability. Going back to college with him, he's been one of my favorite dudes to watch. The inconsistency, and he dropped one when you talk about Dan Campbell going for it. He dropped a huge one last week that really, Goff put it a little bit behind him, but it was at least catchable for the first down. And if Goff puts it out in front of him, it's a touchdown. And that's one of the things where, if Goff is forced off of his position, there's a lot of Tom Brady in Jared Goff. the accuracy, the ability to dissect, pocket mobility. And then at the same time, if you make a move at all, he's not going to make you pay the same way that a lot of guys, vintage Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes and the greats who you're almost afraid to chase, right? You want to keep them contained because they'll just put it over your head. And the thing that is so interesting about Jared Goff is how pressure gets in his head. And that goes back to LA and is one of the reasons that they went and got Stafford is because they felt like they needed somebody who could take the heat, stand in there and take the hits and still get the job done. Goff's acquitted himself extremely well. There are arguments at times to be made. He is playing as well as any quarterback in the NFL, and he's literally been perfect for entire games. He is extremely good when he's playing in rhythm and he has a clean pocket. It's just, look, it's not news. I mean, you start talking about pressuring guys, numbers change. And for very few people, in very few instances, and almost never year over year, does it stay up if it goes up and they do get on a run. Goff is just one of those dudes because of he's a better athlete than you want to give him credit for, but he also wants to play a certain way. And so what's going to be really interesting this week is thinking about, can J-Mo step up or can Gibbs be a guy, and do Gibbs and Montgomery, because those, remember, Gibbs in the preseason, they were talking about him getting a ton of reps at like wide receiver for real, not just Ben Johnson gimmick stuff, but this dude is that good, the Marshall Faulk 2.0 level stuff. So does this become a week where, because of injury to Amon-Ra, to Laporta, and isn't Brock Wright is still red ink? It's not guaranteed we see him, I think, right? So, there's going to be some interesting things. And David Montgomery is really good. Jahmyr Gibbs, really, really good. J-Mo, still a terrifying specimen. They're going to have enough weapons to engineer a plan. It comes down to what is that plan, and then how do the Cowboys keep them out of it?
It's got to be, starting with the defensive tackle play up against those offensive linemen that we just talked about, and getting Goff under pressure. And, you're right that he is a better athlete than maybe that he gets credit for, but he's not running away from anybody on the edge. He might not be able to run away from Osa, and he has to have the biggest splits for a career out of anybody pressured, unpressured in the modern NFL. Like, he goes from possible MVP, totally protected, to, do we even want this guy starting when he is, pressured? So, the Lions, it's crazy how different 7-5 can look. If the Cowboys were 7-5 right now, I'd feel like we're at the top of the world. But for them, they have momentum working against them the other way. And this is really like a heart check DNA type of game. Like, do we have what it takes to reverse course? They're talking about, though, how about this one, Newbear? Coaches are given the old attention to detail and discipline line, and that's never a good sign. That was a lot of the Cowboys' struggles in the first couple of months, and oftentimes that just means we're not good enough to win one-on-one matchups when it comes to blocking and tackling.
Dude, that's a hallmark of Ben Johnson, and that's the biggest thing about the turnaround in Chicago is Caleb Williams. He was asked post-game, what is the biggest difference, or what are you grateful for? Because it was a year to the day that Eberflus had been fired. And Caleb Williams said, consistency. And that's the thing that Chicago was lacking. Ton of playmakers, and then they went and got the interior guys on the offensive line, and then they had a ton of injuries on defense. But if your backups are able to do what is asked and do what's on the board and translate that to the field, you have a chance.
Yeah.
The thing that I think Detroit gets in trouble with is they're so damn talented. And their coach isn't afraid to show that. Meaning, even after Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson, Dan Campbell trusts his guys to call those go-for-it plays, not just on fourth down, but throwing big-time go balls and otherwise putting dudes in position. Gibbs running the rail and taking a shot on a situation where other guys would just run the ball to shrink the distance, even if you don't have a positive success rate play, to make third down easier. Dan Campbell doesn't even know what that means. Like, when you think about biting kneecaps in the introductory press conference and everywhere that thing has taken him, a lot of times when you look back, if J-Mo just catches the ball, we're having a completely different conversation, right? So
sure,
that comes down to attention to detail. That comes down to consistency, and that comes down to what are you doing on Tuesday? What are you doing on Wednesday? And with all these injuries, it makes you wonder the practice reps and the time on task, the time together on task. Because Goff is a guy who wants to be very specific and acute. He's not throwing 50-50 balls to Amon-Ra. He's not throwing 50-50 balls to JMO. These are dudes that get open and he hits them on the number or between the two numbers if they have them. And when you don't play that way and you get challenged and you're off just a little bit, that's when you see the stuff creep up, because you're used to being so clean and things running so smooth that when that ball starts bouncing the other way, or like in JMO's case, it's a little bit behind, you're expecting it here, and it's always here, and now it's here, and you literally drop the ball.
I mean, yes, and they're a drop away from being a game better. They're also a Jahmyr Gibbs run away from being even worse. Like, they could be 6-6 if they hadn't have pulled off that overtime win against the Giants. You know, that would be losers of 4 or 5. And I think what you were just talking about right there, like when you're used to everything being smooth, like if you would study teams in a free fall that are suddenly playing way worse than what their season-long analytics say, there's going to be a couple of things in common. Number one of them is injuries. You check off that box with the Detroit Lions being super talented, right? Because I think talent loses when you lose confidence and you lose what got you there, and you sort of lose connection with what allowed us to turn the corner 3 and 4 years ago. But then the immediate success of last year and thinking they were Super Bowl champions, when you start to fall, suddenly you can't be present and appreciate the fact you are 7-5. You still do have a playoff spot if you don't kick it away anymore. But after being on that high, after thinking we're a 10 of 10, nobody can touch us, like being really good and technically being a contender almost loses its ability to inspire and create enthusiasm.
Well, and what's fascinating about this is, so this Cowboys matchup is a completely different one, speaking of just a few weeks ago, based on the opposite momentum for the guys with the stars on their helmet. Then it's Rams, Steelers, Vikings, Bears. And you got to believe that Green Bay, Detroit, I mean, it was going to be a 3. This was always projected to be one of the, if the Bears took a step forward, 3-team divisions. And the Bears have, and they found a way to get those 1-score game wins and step up when their number is called and make less mistakes than the other guys. And this run first identity, I mean, they went for 281 last week. And they're not going to slow down. They're not going to take their foot. It's Ben Johnson's a maniac taking his shirt off. If there's any chance to get the 1 seed, if anything is on the table, Caleb Williams is going to be playing week 18. The only way that there'll be resting starters is if one is secured and nothing changes because they have a home playoff game wrapped up. And maybe they even like the data or the analytics against, if they were to lose, who they might match up with, right? So you start talking about, you think Kevin O'Connell, if 9 is down, you think he's not going to be auditioning for next year's potential backup, or do they got to reset this and go get someone else if McCarthy really can't play? Like, even if they're out of the playoff race, they have questions to answer. Green Bay fighting for the number 1 spot. That trade for Micah Parsons, they're all in right now. Injuries there as well, but Jordan Love, Micah Parsons and company believe they're a Super Bowl team. So everything that's out in front of them, Steelers fighting for their lives, Cowboys fighting for their lives, everyone they're playing is going to have something on the line. So it's not going to be any easier after this week. You have to believe this is the biting kneecaps, Dan Campbell doing up downs on Hard Knocks, Detroit Lions come correct this week.
An absolute desperate team is what you're in for. It's not going to be easy. Definitely, we don't want to, put off those vibes here on the show, because the Lions are still a very, very solid opponent. But when you look at the weaknesses of this team, and I talked defensively about corners and tackling on the edges earlier, but on the other side, it would be your tackle play, specifically your pass protection from left and right tackle. The Lions GM, though, is catching massive heat, and it's one of the reasons the fans and media are losing faith, and maybe internally on the roster. You do have Aiden Hutchinson, but other than that, they have almost nothing to pressure Dak Prescott. I am very confident that they can come up with a game plan to make sure Aiden Hutchinson does not ruin their day. But a number of edges were available. I mean, can you imagine if this team had gone out and gotten Trey Hendrickson or Myles Garrett or just Jalen Phillips? It wasn't difficult to beat the proposal that the Eagles ultimately got it done with Zadarius Smith. How about Donovan Ezaraku? The Lions picked 27th. They're like, no, we don't need edge help. We got Aiden coming back, and we should be good. So you add all of that up to what their defense is facing a problem with right now. They can't hold a lead. You know, they is as good as some parts of their defense are. They just can't get enough pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah, and I'm fascinated and flabbergasted, really. I always fascinated is kind of like my default word. I'll give you a cheat code when I really just want to drop F-bombs and be meaner, but I'm trying to find a way to be. After Hutch went down and they had all the injuries, their defense kept them. I would not have taken them seriously, betting or otherwise, as a Super Bowl team last year, because they were never going to be able to stop people 3-4 weeks in a row. Before anyone comes after me, I know that they had, the week off, which delayed some of that stuff further. But like when you go into the machinations of going on a run, it's getting your guys back to be healthy. It's being in some place where you have enough veteran talent or enough young talent that doesn't know any better to flip that switch. When the lights come on, they just go make plays. Like, they didn't have enough dudes to get the job done on D. I love Jack. Captain Jack I'm pissed that he didn't end up in Pittsburgh. I wanted him in Pittsburgh bad. All the Iowa guys that they fall in love with, they couldn't have got Captain Jack. And then, you start looking at Terry and Arnold and other moves that they've made, in other places. And you love a lot of the things that they've done. Flabbergasted that they didn't go add pass rush help at the deadline, knowing how it bit them in the ass last year, but also how close they thought they were this year. And now, like, you start talking about some of these bumps in the road. Like, if you get in a place where you got to go on the road and do that 3-4 times in a row, and you don't have Eminem coming out to hype you up, and any of the other built-in advantages of the crowd being quiet and then chanting Jared Goff and everyone believing in you and all that feel-good stuff in Detroit, like, all that's off the table. So how are you not go getting running buddies for, Hutchinson's, I think, leading, he's tied at least for the league lead in peanut punches, and he's got 8.5 sacks in 12 games, and he's the only one out there. Think about that.
Yeah, he's tough, but he's just one guy. I think what this comes down to is the Lions organization doesn't know how to finish the fight. Like last year, they got injured. Maybe they would have won the Super Bowl that year, but we've talked about this with the Cowboys for years, and I'm wondering if it still applies to them. But these organizations that fall in love with the idea of we're going to be good for the next 8 years. We have a bunch of contracts coming up next offseason. If we want to bring all of those guys back, then we can't do something now, even though we have this gaping hole in our roster. And it's this lie that the NFL owners get together and tell each other, other than the teams that actually win it, namely the Eagles. You can't have everything. It's okay. Oh, you got a big old hole on your roster. It's fine. Everybody does. You just try to get into the playoffs and have it be your year. They got to pay Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Brian Branch, Jack Campbell, and Terry and Armstead all coming up next March. So the ability to improve the roster is gone. This Lions run of 3 to 4 years that was birthed by a couple of incredible drafts is amazing. But you got to acknowledge, usually those drafts are once or twice every 10 years. And when they happen to us and we got all these guys on rookie contracts, it's time to hammer that thing, make sure we stack up deep at the most important positions, make sure we turn any weakness into at least league average, but preferably strength with a trade for an all-pro. And it's those kind of teams that ultimately win it. And ultimately there is a piper to pay, as has already come for the Eagles. The Eagles just got the job done, but they don't have the money to spend on free agents anymore because they already created voidable years in the future to get more good players than the salary cap is supposed to allow for 2024. And they dominated the NFL. But the Lions fans are going to be regretting this for a long time that they didn't go for it harder.
Well, you know what is absolutely shocking about it is we're talking about 3-10-1. We're talking about Jared Goff. This is a team that's gone winless. This is Dan Orlovsky running out of the back of the end zone. This is a team that, when you've never done something before, it's easy to say, okay, they don't know how to finish the job. Shame on you for being an asshole and talking shit about the Detroit Lions and this wonderful rebuild. No. when you go 3-10-1, and then you flip it with the draft where everyone thinks that you were an idiot drafting running back as early as you did, believing in your system, your measurables, your way, your traits, not just of the guys you're drafting, but the men you're bringing in, Aaron Glenn, Ben Johnson, to run the damn thing. Dan Campbell in the first place, attitude, effort, intangibles, X's and O's catch up. Very next year, 9-8, 12-5, 15-2, nothing to show for it. The window closing, shrinking fast. I mean, shrink wrapping, this is what, age 31 year for Jared Goff? I think Jared Goff's got a lot of great football ahead of him, especially because the way he plays, if you reinvest in the offensive line, I mean, he's a dude who can play for another decade if he wants to. He's going to be accurate. He's going to stand tall in the pocket. If he's willing to take the hits and you're willing to surround him with speed and guys who can catch the ball and do stuff after the catch, he'll make you pay for as long as he wants to play. The thing is, like, Amon-Ra St. Brown got paid. Like, all the laundry list of dudes that you have to pay, eventually you're going to run out of time relative to the core that you've built, and you've already been sabotaged by the football gods, by the sniper and the turf monster and all the things. So when you have that opportunity, meaning, let's say they win this game, they go on a run. Let's say they lose this game and then went out and get in and go on a run. Whatever is standing in front of this team this offseason has to become like big time moves, the way the Cowboys leaned into George Pickens, moved on from Micah Parsons, and turned that to an undeniable, objectively, if not better, and depending on how you want to look at stats and how that stuff shakes out at the end of the season, but different. They said the way we're doing things isn't working, isn't enough, isn't going to get us where we want to go, and they shook it all the way up.
They did, man. And salute to them for turning the corner and emerging out of that group that, contained the Browns and Jets for the better part of this century. Up next here on How About Wow. How about a little shoddy appreciation post here for you? I'm going to share this screen. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that.
Especially because something you said last pod had some people thinking that you didn't like Shoddy very much. And I said, no. He just wants them to run it when they're at the 1.
Yeah, I love Shoddy. If you go back and listen to some of the podcasts we did coming out of training camp, I believe the Jones family has found their Tom Landry. I believe Shoddy is going to be the guy to at least get back to the conference championship game and maybe win a Super Bowl for this team because he checks all the boxes, the schematics, the culture, everything about Shoddy. There's some game management stuff that is of minor annoyance. But how about this? Todd Archer pointed out from ESPN Research, Shoddy's the second coach this year to beat 3 Super Bowl winning coaches in 3 straight weeks. Pete Carroll, Nick Sirianni, and Andy Reid. Jim Harbaugh did it to open up the season with the Chargers against Reid, Carroll, and Sean Payton. So that's just cool. I don't think it's easy to beat great coaches, but definitely more maybe a sign of how much this team has turned the corner post bye week than like evidence that what I'm predicting about Shoddy is correct. But that's not easy to do. And I just wanted to point that out there for you.
Let's point out one other thing, bringing this back to, I know we're going to get into more of the P's and Q's. This is such a weird week, right? To play Thursday 2 weeks in a row, then not play for 10 days. They have these 2 games in 10 days, 2 games in 11. It's such a weird schedule for the Cowboys. The one kind of end note for me, thinking about the high, right, of taking down both of last year's Super Bowl combatants in 4 days into this another Thursday night game, because typically Thursday night games suck. Typically the TNF stuff is not a good product. And I think them having played on Thursday instead of Sunday, having a couple more days, also knowing that the Detroit Lions are fighting for their football lives the same way the Cowboys will likely have to win out to get all the way to 10 in order to make this thing matter, division or wild card, right? Is like, this can't be one of those things where you show up and let Jacoby Brissett get you. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. David Montgomery is not a backup. He starts for many, many, many other. There's but a handful of teams. David Montgomery isn't start. That's how good Jahmyr Gibbs is. Okay, yeah, Amon-Ra isn't there. J-Mo's going to run by. I don't care if Diggs is back. There's a corner on the Dallas Cowboys that can run with J-Mo. It's a question of how do they scheme him open, and is he 1 or is he still playing 2, and is he running by dudes because Bland is taking somebody else out? And what you talked about previously with Revel and the way this stuff's going to look, every time I saw him line up on Kelsey, I was like, damn it, Dawson, I love your football brain.
Let's
And
go.
you get through some of this stuff from a matchup perspective. Just because they don't have all their dudes doesn't mean they don't have dudes. And their dudes can really go.
Yeah.
And this Thursday is going to be here before we know it. And I feel like this is going to be the first Thursday night game in a long time where not only are people excited about it because of the logos, the names, whatever, it's actually good football because it's not a short week for Dallas, and Detroit has to give it everything they got.
They do. They're going to be in desperate team mode. Little Dak appreciation here for you. 10 of 12 under pressure against the Chiefs for 108, 2 touchdowns. Did not take a sack. First quarterback this season with 100-plus passing yards and 2 touchdowns and no sacks under pressure. He did have the 1 interception, but Dak is back in that mode of the first month of the season where the pressure's not getting to him. The pressure is in a way that he can handle without having to take his eyes downfield, and it's not coming from a second spot. I think that's probably a lot due to the health of his offensive line. But, probably just some variant stuff. It was bound to happen when you're trusting the tackles that they have to trust. And then, hey, before we get out of here, Malik Davis, he was the high performer with the drug test after his 43-yard scramble for touchdown.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Those things are so funny, dude. Like when they get a kicker or a punter because they hit one from long distance or they boom 170, and it's just like a riot to me to think about, the dudes who get put, like, think about him going 43 for 43. And it's like the highlight of his damn year. And then you show up at your locker after you gotta go pee in a cup in front of some dude.
Yeah. It is. It's funny. I don't know if like the drug testing people are doing a bit or they really think like the hottest performers of the game deserve it, but why not? You could have some of that Lance Armstrong EPO in you or something. There's all kinds of things you could do to get amped up. And if a performance comes out of nowhere, I guess it's a decent place to start, right? Don't ignore the clear signs.
Hey,
but,
of
course Malik's clean.
You did the Dak shout out and talking about getting back to where he is. About the only thing he didn't do was either flip the formation or I guess waste a timeout when they're throwing into the sun, right? Other than that, sometimes you're going to get got, and the interception he threw, I think you have to realize that the other guys are getting paid too. And it's not like kryptonite if you make a mistake. And that's the thing I love about this version of Dak Prescott is they're going to go through the season. Let's say you throw 10, 12 picks at the end of the day, you look up and you got 40 touchdowns. I think you take that. I mean, Stafford, how many times when you go through like the big runs that he went on in LA where he would make an absolutely god-awful and then he'd come back at the end and find Cooper Kupp and they get a ring. Like you have to take chances to make the biggest plays. Like everything isn't just going to be scripted wide open, no matter how good CD and GP are, right? So
yeah.
The other thing is in that game inside the game, there was a time in where we were talking about D4K, but then MV Prescott. If they win out, is he the MVP of this league?
He could. I was going to bring that up. I think the Rams are winning so much, and Stafford is having a Stafford year, but the stats look better than usual. I think that'd be tough to deny. I think the Rams are going to have to slow down a little bit, but I could definitely see Dak runner up. And if they run the table, who knows? Like the power of that narrative and that excitement, that storyline might be too much to deny. You need this one right here to win out. You get the Lions, and then your toughest remaining game in the Final Four is going to be the Chargers, and we can't wait to talk about all this with you over the next 5 days. For New Bear, I'm Dawson. Till next time, how about wow?